So the supplies you're going to need is your yarn of choice. This is just what I'm going to be using for showing you how to make the stitches, but the yarn I used for my sweater was called Yarntopia, and I will link it in the description box below. Then you're going to want 2 crochet hooks, and these are for that other yarn. Again, I will put in the description box what I used for my sweater. So the smaller crochet hook is going to be used for the making of your sweater, and then the larger one is only to help you get your chains large enough. You're going to need 4 stitch markers to mark out your neckline, some scissors, and also your yarn needle. And I like storing mine in this little scissor thing. It just keeps everything together. It's very handy. And you're also going to need a measuring tape. I thought I would just show you how we are constructing it. So we're going to start by making our chain at the bottom, and then we are just going to be working our way up, going back and forth like this. And you're going to repeat that for both the back and the front panels. They're going to be the exact same. And once you have reached your collarbone area, you're going to stop going back and forth all the way, and then we are going to put in stitch markers for either side. And this is just where you want your neckline to be. Mine tends to be about, I think it was about 5 inches, but you're just going to put the stitch markers in. You're going to continue going back and forth for that little shoulder portion. So just think where the seam would be on your clothing normally, just kind of halfway over. So you're just going to keep crocheting rows back and forth until you reach that measurement. And then your sleeves, of course, they are going to be made the exact same. And hopefully this helps you visualize better as you're making it, what you're going to be doing. And for the sleeves as well, you're just going to be going back and forth. There will be no increasing or decreasing, so it is very beginner friendly and very easy. To get started today, I'm just going to show you how to make the stitch, and then after I'm done with that, I will tell you how to get it to be the right size for all your panels, your sleeves, and then your front and back panels. And to get started, we're just going to make a slip knot. And this stitch pattern is in multiples of 6 plus 3. So that means you're just going to keep chaining in multiples of 6. So 6, 12, 18, and so on. And when you've finished getting the width that you'd like, then you're going to chain an additional 3. And that's just to make sure that you have the right amount of stitches for the stitch pattern. And to get started with the chains, I'm just going to take my larger hook size. And you want to make sure you're chaining loosely. And again, multiples of 6 plus 3. And I'm going to do 15 for my smaller swatch. So we're just going to go and kind of pull it out a little bit just to make sure that it's a little bit loose. You don't want it too loose, but you also don't want it to be tight. So you want to be kind of pulling it out just a little bit. See, that makes really big ones. Better to have your chains to be a little bit too big than too small, because if it's too small, you won't know it till you've gotten a long little ways. So we are going to skip these first 2 chains, and we're going to go into the third, and I like working to the back bump, so I'm just going to turn it over. We're going to put a double crochet in that. So just going to go into that back bump, double crochet. Then we're going to skip 1. And in the next stitch, we're going to put a V-stitch, which is a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet. And now you're going to skip 2. And then in that third chain, you're going to do a puff V-stitch. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to insert our hook into that chain. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, pulling it up just a little bit. Yarn over, go back into that chain again. Pull up another loop, making sure to pull it up. Yarn over, go into that chain again, pull up a loop. And you should have 7 loops on your hook. And you're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 of them. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get all of them. It takes a little bit of practice. And then you're going to chain 1, and we're going to put another puff stitch into this same chain space. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops. And if it makes it easier to remember, just remember that you're yarning over and pulling up a loop 3 times, and then of course you should have 7 loops on your hook. And I need some more yarn again, because I keep running out. And then the yarn ball disappears, of course. I'm sure everybody experiences this. Okay, and we're not going to chain and close that up. We're just going to skip 2 stitches, and then into that 3rd one, we're going to put a regular V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And again, we're going to skip 2. We're going to go in this 3rd chain with our puff V-stitch. So yarning over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, that's 1. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, that's 2. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, that's 3. I have 7 loops on my hook, so I'm going to yarn over, and sometimes I will grab here or kind of grab like this and just kind of pull it and make sure I'm going to call it the head of the crochet hook is fully in line. I don't really know how to describe this, but you can see, but in line to where it can just kind of go through all of them. And then sometimes you have little strands that get caught on the side, and you can just go through those and that. And then you're going to chain 1, yarn over, pull up a loop 1, we got 2 and 3, yarn over, make sure your hook's aligned, kind of pull on the stitches, and then go through all of them. And then now that we're at the end, well, that's lovely. I must have made a mistake in the beginning. Normally, when you're at the end of your chain, you should have 2 chains, and in that case, you would skip 1 and then put a double crochet into the final chain. Now I'm just going to double check mine and make sure that I actually started out with the right amount. So I found what went wrong and why I was short a stitch. Your initial chain should actually be multiple of 6 plus 4, and I will add in text to the beginning. But originally I was going to have single crochets on the very bottom, but I didn't go with that because I tried it and it didn't look as nice as it does just starting your stitch immediately. So yes, that was my mistake. So you do want multiples of 6 plus 4. For your row 2, you're going to chain 2, turn your work, and this chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So into this very first double crochet stitch, we're going to put another double crochet. And then into the chain 1 space of our puff stitch, puff V-stitch, we're going to put a regular V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and into the regular V-stitch from the previous row into that chain 1 space, we're going to put a puff V-stitch. Yarn over, we got 1, 2, 3, then just go through all 7. You're going to chain 1 and go in with another puff stitch in that same chain 1 space. And then going directly into the next chain 1 space of the puff V-stitch from the previous row, we're just going to make a regular V-stitch. And then into the regular V-stitch from the previous row, we're going to put another puff V-stitch. Okay, and you are going to find that last double crochet from your previous row. This chain 2 does not count, so if you need to, you can use a stitch marker and put it into the first double crochet of each row to help you find it whenever you come to the end. But I'm just going to put a double crochet on top of that double crochet, and then you are simply going to repeat that last row. So I'll do it one more time. We're going to chain 2, turn our work. This chain 2 does not count as a stitch. Into this first double crochet, we're going to put a double crochet, and this is where, if you want, you can put a stitch marker into that very first stitch so you can find it on whenever you come back. Then into this first puff stitch, we're going to make a regular V-stitch, and into the regular V-stitch from the previous row, into that chain 1 space, we're going to put a puff V-stitch, and into that puff V-stitch, chain 1 space, we're going to put a regular V-stitch, and into the chain 1 space from the regular V-stitch below, we're going to put a puff V-stitch. And then into the double crochet, not the chain 2, but the last double crochet of your row, you're just going to put a double crochet on top of it. You're just going to keep repeating that. And of course, whenever you chain 2 entering your work, this is what it would look like at the very end, whenever you have to go into that final double crochet space. Again, only if you are having a hard time finding it. To figure out how much you should make your initial chain, you are going to take your tape measure and you're going to measure both V stitches. So it should be 6 stitches. So we got 1, that chain space, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And really you just kind of want to measure like this. So we're going to take that, and mine is just about 2 inches, a little bit less, but we're just going to call it 2 inches for the sake of simplicity. Now let's say I wanted my front and back panels to be 18 inches. So if I know that 6 stitches is 2 inches, I'm just going to take 18, divide it by 2, and I have 9 repeats. So then you're going to take that number 9 and you're going to multiply it by 6, and that equals 54. So for my initial chain in multiples of 6 plus 4, I'm going to chain 54 and then add 4 to it, so I need to make my starting chain 58 stitches. And then of course you're going to do the same thing for sleeve. So if my sleeve, I needed it to be, let's say, 8 inches wide, well, since a repeat is 2 inches, we're going to divide 8 by 2, so you got 4. You need to do 4 times the amount of stitches in that repeat, which is 6 stitches, so 4 times 6 is 24. And then you need to add the 4 stitches at the end, so now you have 28. So your chain for your sleeves needs to be 28 stitches. And let's be honest, it took me a while to figure out how to try and explain this, so I really hope this makes sense. You'll want to write down your numbers so you don't forget them. I used numbers that would be easier to demonstrate, so they were even numbers, 18 and then 8. And of course, in order to get your initial measurements, if you have a sweater that you like the fit of really, really well, you can just measure your sweater and how wide the panels are and how wide the sleeves are. And that can be your go-to, or you can measure on your body. I like to measure my shoulder to shoulder measurement, and that's what I went with, but it also depends on the fit if you want it to be more fitted and wider. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I will answer the best I can. If I don't know how to answer, I will let you know that too, but I will try to give you an answer. And if a lot of people find it confusing, I will just try and refilm it. To figure out where you want your neckline to be, you're just going to hold this up and you're just going to put stitch markers and roughly how wide you want it to be. And then you're going to count in from both sides to make sure that you have the same amount of stitches on either side of the center. And you're just going to move around your stitch markers as needed. For me, I am in by 8 of the V-stitches, and then I did the same for this side. So the first shoulder portion that you're working, whenever you're working along this way, this first stitch marker needs to be in a double crochet V-stitch, and then the one on this side will need to be in a puff V-stitch. And that is important to make sure that our rows match up whenever we're doing the shoulder portion. For the shoulder portion, we're going to chain 2, and you're just going to work in pattern up until the stitch marker, and I will meet you there. So we're just going to do the double crochet here, we got a double crochet V-stitch, puff V-stitch all the way along, and I will see you whenever you're at your stitch marker. I have reached this V-stitch where my stitch marker is in, so I'm just going to take that out. And it is important to make sure that your first stitch marker, the one that you work up to first, is in a double crochet V-stitch, because we need to end on a puff V-stitch at the end of the row like we would in a normal row. So that's what we're going to put right here. And then in this next stitch right here, we are going to put a double crochet. And then for the next row, we're going to chain 2 and turn. And this is going to be worked the exact same as all your other rows. So just double crochet in that very first stitch. I'm going to do a double crochet V-stitch, and then a puff V-stitch. Just continue along and I will meet you at the end. Ending on a puff V-stitch, I'm just going to put a double crochet in that last stitch, and then you're going to chain 2, turn, and work across, and then in the same way. Like I said, it's the same as all these other rows, it's just a shorter section, and you're just going to go until you hold it up and it comes halfway over your shoulder. Just think where it would sit whenever it's sewed together, and just make sure you hold it up there. And whenever it goes, this part's supposed to be at your collarbone, and then this will need to be at that middle part of your shoulder, and you're just going to keep making rows until it reaches that. And for me, I will be making 4, and then I will show you how to do the second shoulder portion. Okay, I finished it up and I just chained 1 and left a long tail for seaming. Now to get on to the other side, we're going to attach our yarn. So first, you want to make a slip knot. And then we're going to look at our stitch marker, and we're going to go into that stitch to the right of it. And just attach our yarn there. So I'm going to chain 1, then just try and pull it down. I'm going to chain 2 and put a double crochet in that same stitch. Then you're going to move your stitch marker. In this puff V-stitch, we're going to put a double crochet V-stitch. And then in the next one, you know the drill, puff V-stitch, then double crochet V-stitch, and so on. And I think you get it, because really the only new thing would be attaching the yarn, but you're just going to work all the way to the end, chain 2, work all the way back, and do the same amount of rows as you did for this first shoulder portion. Do the same to your other panel, and I will meet you back to show you how to attach them. Where you're just going to put our panels right sides facing together, so you want the wrong side facing you, and you're just going to pick one of the tails you've left that's long enough to sew it together, and you're just going to start going under both of the stitches on either side, and you're just going to go under and around, and you just kind of see what I'm doing here, but you're just going to keep going under both, pull it through, go under both, pull it through, and then it just goes all the way around. You're just going to keep doing this, and once you're at the end, you're just going to go ahead and weave that tail in, and I like to go in zigzags and just kind of back and forth just to make sure it's really secure. And once you're finished, you're just going to cut it, and then you're going to repeat the same thing on the other shoulder. For your sleeve, you want to make sure that it is right side facing down and the wrong side is facing up. Then I just found my middle section and I attached it to where the seam was on the shoulders, and then I just put stitch markers in on either side roughly where it looked even, and then I'm just going to attach my yarn. And we're just going to do the same thing as we did for the shoulders. First you're going to pull a tail long enough, and then you are going to secure the ends. Then we're just going to go and do the same thing we did for the shoulder portion, and you're just going to go in the stitch on the sleeve, which is a normal stitch, and then you're going to go pick just a side post stitch where it looks like it's about even, and that's why we have stitch markers in there, to help you figure out if it's still laying flat, and you'll see me check it a few times as I'm just seaming along. And I don't really have any specific spots that I put my needle into on the side. I'm just looking to see what's even. And now we have reached a stitch marker, so I'm just going to take that out and then go into the very center part, and then just continue on doing the same thing all the way to the end. And I'm at the end now, so I'm just going to take that stitch marker out, finish up the last couple of stitches, and then you're just going to take that really long tail, cut it a bit shorter, and you're just going to weave in your ends. And once they're nice and secure, you'll cut any excess yarn you have left, and then we will go on to seam up our sides. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I did my side seams a little bit differently. I attached my yarn here, and then I made a chain one, and instead of just going around with the sewing needle, I ended up doing single crochets because I had lots of tails that I wanted to go over. So I'm just going to tell you what I did because I forgot to film. But after you do your chain one, you're just going to put a single crochet in that very first side stitch, and then you're going to put it in the side stitch on the other side on your other panel. And of course you do want to make sure that your panels are still facing wrong side towards you, so your seam should be facing up, if that makes sense, but right sides together still like earlier, and then wrong side facing up. Then I actually put stitch markers every few repeats of these V stitches. I think I went about 10 or so. Then I would put a stitch marker into the side of both, just to make sure I was keeping my project lined up as I single crocheted along. And I did that. I put all my stitch markers in, and then as I reached them I would undo it, and then once I was at my last one I would just count up a little bit more, put the stitch marker in, and so on. And then of course you're just going to do the same thing all the way across until you reach your sleeve, and then you're going to chain one, cut, and then you just want to weave in your tail. And this tail will be easier to weave in because you got single crochets that you can put it into. And again, I didn't film this. I think I was in just such a hurry to finish my project because I'd been working on it for a while and I was just ready to have it done with, and there wasn't any good lighting to film. So for the neckline, I attached my yarn. I picked one side to be my back. I attached the yarn in the middle, and then I just worked single crochets across, and I put them one into each stitch that I found a loop for. Now, if you find that yours are like bunching up and looks like it's increasing, well, don't put it into every stitch. Try every 4 stitches and then like skipping one. Then for the sides, you're just going to just make it to where it lays flat, basically. You're just going to find loops to go into, and if it starts bunching up or it's really tight or something, you either went into too many or you went into too few, and you just want to look straight like this. Then you're going to reach your corner, and then you'll do the same thing on the front as you did the back. The next shoulder, you're just going to keep going with single crochets. And once you reach here, you're going to either slip stitch, chain 1, and then weave in your ends, or you can do the invisible join. And there are a lot of tutorials for how to do that, and also some of my patterns I show how to do that. So if you don't know how to already, you can easily find a tutorial for it. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know if there's a pattern you'd like for me to make next, and leave a comment if you have any questions.